Check, 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 check. All right, everybody. Going to get today's meeting underway. Rex, what number meeting is this for us? You know, I'm always off on my numbers. Is it number 8? So we're 8 of 14 to go. So great to have you here on a Monday. A lot of faces, some we haven't seen in a while. Great to have you here. Great to have Larry Csonka here. And as we always get started on Monday, Gary, will you come up and lead us in a word of prayer, please?
Thank you, David. Let's pray, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity you've given us to gather together today and enjoy each other's company, hear a great speaker, enjoy the food. Lord, we just ask you to use us today in your service. Amen.
All right. You know, I've been telling you about how far Larry's had to travel to get here. And I was telling him yesterday when I picked him up how honored we were for a guy to agree to come to speak. So, Matt, will you punch up? I just want to give everybody an example of how far Larry has come. You can look at the screens. You're back there. That is from Wasilla, Alaska. It's 4,000 miles. Not that picture, although we'll get to that later. But that's how far he came to. And listen, a lot of guys would say, I don't care how much you're paying. I don't care what you guys are doing. I'm not coming that far. So let's go ahead and give a round of applause right off the bat for him coming. What's that? It would have been tougher if he'd have walked. That's right. Listen, he's a very engaging and very sharp guy. I can't wait for you guys to get up and hear him shortly. I want to remind everybody, go ahead and tell everybody if you can't be here to go to Facebook, go to 1037 The Buzz, our LittleRockTouchdown.com website. You can hear all this live if you can't be here today, and then mute your phone if you don't mind. I will remind everybody, we've got maybe two of the greatest. You could make the argument, 2 of the greatest running backs back-to-back at the Touchdown Club. Larry Csonka, maybe 2 of the most punishing in the history of the league. Larry Csonka this week and Earl Campbell next week. So we're excited about that. How about that for 2 back-to-back meetings? Is that not great? We encourage you, if you haven't joined up, please sign up. Whether you're a $75 member or a 50-yard line, which we really appreciate a lot. We can't do it without your memberships. It's a combination of sponsors and memberships together to be able to have the kind of lineup like we do. Let me thank our sponsors real quick, Twin City Limousine, Greg Hatcher, and Popeye. Is Popeye here today? Popeye and I just found this out. Dale Bennett has been taking care of us, been leading the way for Greg Hatcher's business, Twin City Limousine. But now, officially, Dale is going to Dallas, and Popeye's going to be in charge. So let's give it up for Popeye, doing a good job for us going forward. Thank you, Popeye, for the great job you do. I do want to thank CGRW for their continued work. We're getting ready to really fire it up on the Cliff Harris Award. And as you saw the picture, Cliff had a couple comments about Larry he wanted me to share. But thank you for CGRW and helping us in so many ways. If you've got an issue with your business, you want to promote, market, whatever, PR, they can handle it. Thank you guys so much at CGRW, Mark Raines, Dan Sawyer, and Darren Gray. 1037 The Buzz, Justin Akery, Wes Moore out there going live. We appreciate them being here every week. And they're sponsored by Arkansas Urology and Epic Health. Scott Davis, Tim Langford. Now, where's Scott? I know Scott's a big Larry Csonka fan. So I love it when our sponsors have a favorite that he and his brother get to come see and hear. So we appreciate all you guys do. 9 Arkansas Urology locations statewide, 4 Epic Health locations, Conway, Little Rock, North Little Rock, Benton. Go get checked, please, today. Now, we've got a special announcement, War Memorial Stadium. This is our next sponsor. Kevin Crass is here at the head table. And, you know, it's Ole Miss week. And we need to have a full house, right? Do we all agree we need to have a full house? We need to sell it out. And Kane Webb sent me a text. He said, have you heard from Kevin Crass? I said, not yet. He said, well, Kevin wants to do something special. And Kevin spearheaded this. You guys remember what happened at the Salt Bowl this year? Unfortunate, but the game was not able to be finished. And so because of Kevin's effort, the War Memorial Trust Fund, Stadium Improvement Fund, is going to purchase 300 tickets to allow both Benton and Bryant's football teams to come to Ole Miss, Arkansas this week. How about that? So, Kevin, thank you so much for that. Also, trustees Donnie Cook and Gary Smith. It's an incredibly great gesture. And if you didn't see it, listen, it's Kevin Crass's week, man. If you didn't see it, how about Kevin in high profile, everybody? How about that? I had no idea that Kevin Crass was a starting point guard with U.S. Reed at Pine Bluff High, won a state championship, goes to OBU on a basketball scholarship. Who knew? You've been sandbagging all your athletic career, Kevin. But how cool is that to do that? So thank you, Kevin, and all the folks at War Memorial. And I know that Kane Webb is here today, who's head of our Parks and Tourism. Great to have you here, Kane. Jim Daly, who's head of Arkansas Tourism. Jim, great to have you here. Did Grady make it? Grady didn't make it. Great to have all you guys and excited what's going to happen. For the first time, we have an SEC conference game on a Saturday night since 1999. It's been that long since we've had a conference matchup. Since 1999. So hope we fill it up. Next, I want to thank Farm Bureau, Pulaski County, Todd Dennis and Stephen Reichert. Todd, are you here today? Where's Todd at? Not here. You know what? We're going to get on him today. I mentioned him last week and he wasn't here. That's 2 misses in a row. If you got any needs from insurance, go see these folks over at Farm Bureau, Pulaski County. They'll take real good care of you. They took good care of my girlfriend Jessica, and they'll take real good care of you. Also want to say thank you to Dairy Queen, Blake and Nelson Lively. You guys, #1 in the country. You guys are killing it. New location in Saline will open when? By year end. Larry, do you have any Dairy Queens in Alaska? A couple. There you go. Do you have the same things at a Dairy Queen in Alaska that you would in?
They sell a lot of ice cream 3 months a year.
3 months a year. Thank you, Dairy Queen, for being a sponsor. Saline County on the way. Verizon Arena. This week's a busy week, Rex. Fallout Boy, October 9th. Lauren Daigle, October 10th. Thomas Rhett, October 11th. Naming rights are still out there. Anybody here? You got companies. Anybody here? They're naming rights for the arena. They're out there now. And today, I mentioned it last week, Razorback basketball tickets go on sale for the December 15th game against Texas San Antonio. And I already said, where's Jeremy? I know Michael Marion said, they said there was already a line today to buy tickets. So we want that sold out. Michael Marion's in a much better mood this week because of Mississippi State winning. But we decided today, Verizon was so nice to say, tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get things started because today's the kickoff for sales. Look underneath your chair, and somebody's got 2 tickets to go to the game on December 15th. And if you got it, just scream, it's me. Where are we at? Who's feeling lucky today? Look at Larry just turned over my chair. He's looking. Did anybody have it anywhere? What? Where? No? Nobody yet? I know we put it somewhere. Bend over a little bit harder. Shine a flashlight. Debbie, do you need the help? I've been told it's somewhere in this section. I've been told, listen, Bill, you got to get out of your seat and look under your chair, young man. Larry, you're moving like you're Larry Zonka out there. Come on. Nobody's played football as long as Larry did. Going once. Going twice. I tell you what, we'll announce it at the end of the meeting. If you find it by the end, we'll announce it. How about that? But thank you for Verizon Arena for giving you the tickets. That's funny. Also, want to thank Big Red Stores. What's that? Fake news. Oh, my gosh, you didn't just do that on me. I know they're over there somewhere. Hey, I want to thank the folks over at Big Red Stores. We were there at the grand opening for the Highway 70 store. It's beautiful. That's number store 35, but you have 40 altogether, right? But that's store number 35. Is that right? I'm like a spokesperson. I'm doing Roger's job. Great to have Big Red on board. Congratulations. If you're going to Hot Springs or coming from Hot Springs, you can't miss it. It's a fantastic store. Thanks for Big Red and their sponsorships. Judy Henry, thank you so much. Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings. I know I was telling Larry Zonka about our Cliff Harris Award. Oh, you finally found it. Hey, there they are. Congratulations. It took you a while, but you found them. But I was telling Larry about Cliff Harris and the Cliff Harris Award, and he played against Cliff, and we couldn't have a Cliff Harris Award without Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings. So if you have any legal issues, please go to them and tell them you're a member of the Touchdown Club. They'll take great care of you. They did me, as you guys all know, for the last 2 or 3 years, and I appreciate Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings. Crane Automotive, Larry Crane, and the largest dealer group in Arkansas, 19 dealerships, 800 employees. Where are my Crane guys? Right there in the front row. Great to see. If Larry can't be here, somebody's here every week. I appreciate that. Larry missed out today, though. He's going to miss out hearing Zonka, but thank you, guys. Make sure and go to Crane and tell them you want a Touchdown Club discount. They'll take real good care of you. The Democrat Gazette, Wally Hall is here today. Great to have Wally every week. Amanda Copley, who was heading up our All-Arkansas Preps Player of the Week. Thank you, guys, so much. Appreciate your support. Couldn't do it without the Democrat Gazette. And finally, Simmons Bank. Now, today's a bank holiday. And so you knew that we would not have as many Simmons folks here today, but also they had a death in their banking family, and it was a guy that I went to school with. His name was Rick Anderson, 56 years old, just found out that he was sick 2 weeks ago, and he was gone that quick. 3 kids, and I had pledged Sigma Chi for a while, and he was sort of my big brother, and so I know a lot of those folks are at his funeral today, and so our sincere condolences, thank you, go out to him in prayers too, because that's obviously you got a mom and 3 kids there that don't have their dad and husband anymore, so that's a sad thing. And but thank you so much for Simmons, for all you guys do for us. Jim Shinup is up here at the head table. Jim, thank you for being here. We appreciate you representing Simmons. I was telling Larry about the amazing growth of this locally owned bank out of Pine Bluff, and we couldn't do it without Simmons Bank being our presenting sponsor. Let's give a round of applause to all of our sponsors if you could. I want to thank the fine folks at the embassy. Ryan Terry, Brent Bailey do a great job setting up every week. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan knows how particular I am. Yeah, right. You didn't realize I was going to be this bad, did you, Ryan? That's okay. Love you, man. Thank you. Matt Johnson, Fidelity Local 6, handling all our AVs. And, hey, if you've got an event that you need somebody to, he's going to be helping out with my award show on Wednesday when I get honored by the World Service for the Blind. You can hire Matt to do shows for you or events for you. So make sure and take advantage of Matt. We appreciate him, Fidelity Local 6. Dwayne Duncan taking all of our photos for the last 10, 15 years. Dwayne, we couldn't do it without you. Social media, at Little Rock Touchdown Club is the Twitter. Don't forget Facebook page and lrtouchdown.com. Our amazing Touchdown Club volunteers. Now, did you see the shirts that they were wearing today? Did those not look great? Come on, our volunteers who are wearing their shirts. Come on, stand up. Look at that. Let's give a round of applause for our volunteers. Look at that. Look at the show. How about that? Look at that. That's what I'm talking about. Debbie Wyman, couldn't do without Debbie, our executive director. Thanks so much, Debbie, for all you do. Grant Garrett's up here. He's still studying, watching, learning. We appreciate Grant. I did want to mention, speaking of the Touchdown Club shirts, everybody who's ordered shirts, they're in. So RJ is doing the logos on those this week, so we should have those for next week's meeting. We appreciate Cassie Caldwell over at Hogman's Game Day Superstore and RJ for handling that. Really do. And it's time now for our All-Arkansas Prep Player of the Week. He is BB Senior High School running back Taylor Boyce. This was 2 weeks ago. Taylor had 247 yards on 34 carries, 3 touchdowns, and a 31-22 win over Watson Chapel. His coach is here, John Shannon, and I was asking John about what can we say about this young man. He just said he was a hard worker, he's a great leader, and he's in 6 advanced placement classes. 6. So I asked him, yeah, that's worth a round of applause right there. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to Taylor Boyce, our All-Arkansas Prep Player of the Year. Just got a bonus pick having Larry Zonk in there. I do want to welcome his mother, Dee Tippett, his sister, Zoe Boyce, and his girlfriend, Mariana, is here today. So major brownie points. You should be out of the doghouse for at least a month if anything goes wrong. Mariana, thanks. Great to have you. Is he a good boyfriend? Yes, that's right. Good answer. Nothing like putting you on the spot or anything. Listen, I want y'all come. If y'all get married one of these days, I want you to come back and we'll celebrate that here at the Touchdown Club. How about that? Love happens here at the Touchdown Club. Just saying. Everybody welcome Rex Nelson for the weekend wrap-up.
David always does such a good job recognizing all of our sponsors. David, I just had a great marketing idea. We can put our sponsors together. You mentioned Michael Marion's going to be looking for new naming rights. Put him with these Dairy Queen people. We'll put a big swirl on the top, and it'll be the giant dilly bar, the arena. Is that not great? Yeah, have that swirl there. We just call it the dilly for short, and you'll holler dilly dilly when you go through the door every time. That's why we make the big bucks, David. We come up with ideas like this. I do like the fact you put the map up there. Thank you, Larry. Came all the way from Wasilla. You know what that means? He can see Russia from his house. It's a long way. Tell the mayor we sent our regards. All right, we'll get through this quickly here. Number 1, Alabama 65, Arkansas 31, though. The Razorbacks getting better on offense. 405 yards, enough to tick off Nick Saban. Anything that ticks off Nick Saban, I like. Alabama, unfortunately, had 639 yards. They have now won 12 consecutive games in the series. Now, this is impressive. This is not losing to a team you're supposed to beat. Alabama has now won 78 consecutive games against unranked opponents. That's just never slipping up. The 12 losses in a row to Alabama are the most since the 12 consecutive losses to Texas in Arkansas history. Those occurred, and Jim was at all of them, 1935 through 1950. Your office is going to think it's the truth again, Jim. At 1-5, Arkansas off to its worst start since Frank Broyles' first team started 0-6 in 1958, and that Broyles guy ended up doing okay, didn't he? So patience. Most points scored by an SEC team against Arkansas, tying what Auburn did in a 65-43 victory in 2010. 6 consecutive games for Bama to have more than 500 yards of offense and 45 or more points. Now, I'm predicting, because of the magic of War Memorial Stadium, this is going to be the week that Arkansas does not allow a defensive or a special teams touchdown. They've allowed defensive or special team touchdowns in 4 consecutive games. Think about the SEC West. You're going to play number 1 teams. 10th time in the past 12 seasons for Arkansas to play a number 1 team. Arkansas is 0-7 against Alabama when it's number 1, 4-20 all time, in case you're wondering, against number 1 teams. The 4 wins, you remember LSU in 3 overtimes in 2007, and then Texas in 1964, 1965, and 1981. So great week to really sell out the stadium again. I cannot push that enough. That is really important to those of us here in Arkansas, Central Arkansas certainly, going forward. Now, UCA goes to 3-2, 2-1 in the conference following a 66-35 win over Houston Baptist, which falls to 1-4, 0-3 in conference. Here's the thing. The Bears score 66 points even though they're down to their 3rd-string quarterback. Sophomore starter Braylon Smith broke his ankle a week earlier. Junior reserve Kirk Ball came in. He injured his shoulder, so that leaves it Saturday to a redshirt freshman named Luke Hales. Now, get this. His first pass as a college quarterback on the 2nd play from scrimmage goes for a 65-yard touchdown. His first run as a college quarterback goes for a touchdown. His 4th pass as a college quarterback goes for 31 yards and a touchdown. How about that as a college starter? He was 16 of 27 passing, 304 yards, 5 TDs, and he didn't even know for sure he was going to start till Friday night. Now that's quite a story. UAPB, Jesse Mason and I were talking in the line, close. Get close this time. Finally fall to Jackson State 30-27. Golden Lions now 1-5 overall, 0-2 in the SWAC. Jackson State 2-2, 1-1. Golden Line quarterback Jared Hayes passed for 247 yards and 2 TDs. It was number 6 Ouachita traveling to number 19 Harding in one of the biggest games in the country in Division II last weekend. And the final score, Ouachita 7, Harding 3. What is this, 1958 instead of 2018? 2 great defenses. Harding led 3-0 at the half. Harding still leads 3-0 at the end of the 3rd quarter. Ouachita's quarterback is out with an injury. Harding holds the ball 14 plays, 8 minutes, 15 seconds to start the 3rd quarter. Looks like they're about to make it 10-0, and they fumble at the Ouachita 6. Ouachita moves a wide receiver named Drew Harris. You might remember him from Benton High School. We honored him here. Great player. They move him to quarterback. Tigers finally drive 85 yards in 12 plays. Shunsey Thomas goes 19 yards for the touchdown, only TD in the game, 9:29 left. Harding then uses up the rest of the clock, more than 9 minutes, to drive all the way down to the field, have a 4th and 1, get an illegal procedure that makes it 4th and goal from the 6, and they throw an incomplete pass. Ouachita goes to 6-0, and Harding's the best 4-2 team in all of Division II, I can assure you. New poll just out this morning. Ouachita up to number 5, highest ranking ever, number 5 in the country. SAU is number 15. Harding still in the top 25 at 24. So we got 3 teams from Arkansas in the top 25. Very impressive. SAU also 6-0. A tougher than expected 21-16 victory over Southern Nazarene down in Magnolia. 1-5 Southern Nazarene had the ball with a chance to take the lead, but its last 2 drives ended with turnovers. Barrett Renner for the Mule Riders, 215 yards passing. Henderson evens its record at 3-3. 56-21 victory over 2-4 Oklahoma Baptist in Arkadelphia. The Reddies outrushed the Bisons 383-87. Richard Stametti for Henderson, 17-29 passing. Arkansas Tech, UAM, both now 2-4. Bill Lawrence, how about those Boll Weevils? UAM pulls off a 34-16 upset in Russellville. Cole Sears was 20 of 33 passing, 220 yards for the Boll Weevils. Division III, Hendricks falls to 1-5, 0-4 in the conference, 57-41 loss to Birmingham Southern. NAIA line falls to 2-4 overall, 1-3 in conference, following a 49-43 loss to Wayland Baptist in 4 overtimes. All right, SEC. Remember we were talking about Kentucky last week. Well, no longer undefeated. A&M wins 20-14 overtime. Wildcats miss a 43-yard field goal attempt. Aggies then score a touchdown 4 plays later. So Kentucky 5-1, 3-1 in the SEC. Kentucky was trying to improve to 6-0 for the first time, get this, since 1950. And could not get it done. Aggies 4-2 overall, 2-1 in the conference. How about Florida shocking LSU in Gainesville, 27-19, after Tim Tebow, who's been here, or his father's been here, spoke to the Gators before the game. I guess Tebow got him fired up. And get this, a former Arkansas baseball pitcher named Lucas Krull, who is now a Gator backup tight end, comes in and throws a touchdown pass on a trick play to help propel Florida to victory. Florida had lost 6 of the previous 8 games against LSU. Both teams are now 5-1. Number 2, Georgia goes to 6-0 overall, 4-0 in the conference, 41-13 over Vanderbilt, which is even at 3-3 overall, 0-2 in the conference. Jake Fromm throws 3 TD passes for the Bulldogs. Mississippi State thrashes Auburn 23-9 as Nick Fitzgerald runs for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. Auburn, little pressure now coming on Gush yet again. 4-2, 1-2 in conference, and they were expecting big things. Mississippi State also 4-2 and 1-2. South Carolina hits a 33-yard field goal with just 2 seconds left in Columbia, South Carolina, to beat Missouri 37-35. Tigers had gone ahead 35-34 on a 57-yard field goal with 1:18 remaining. Both of those teams are 3-0. South Carolina's 2-2 in conference. Missouri is 0-2. And Ole Miss will come in Saturday night here with a 4-2 record, 70-21 over Louisiana Monroe over in Oxford. Now, remember, you got Tuesday night football this week. We talked about it last week. Big game in the Sun Belt Conference. Appalachian State at ASU. Ole Miss at Arkansas, of course. War Memorial Stadium. Be there. 6:30 kickoff. If not, we've got Berry at Hendricks and Southwestern Assemblies of God at Line. And all of the GAC teams, all 6 of them, play conference games in Oklahoma this week. So the pickings are limited, but they're still there. Games at Jonesboro, Little Rock, Conway, Batesville. Get out and see a college football game. Thank you, everybody.
One more note on the Ole Miss. Hey, listen, that Ole Miss game could be a shootout like it was last year. You got 2 really high-powered offenses. One of the things we talked about on the Buzz this morning with Kevin and Wally is that the ticket prices, was it a year ago that they were $100? 5 or 6 years ago. Remember, the ticket prices were $100 for a conference game, $110. And now they're around $40. Is that right? So if you hadn't thought about if there's a kid down the street, never been to a game, or you got somebody in your family, take them to a game. This is going to be a great atmosphere. You can tailgate all day. Just as Rex said, we just want to have this thing sold out. It's important, I think, to put up a good face for Central Arkansas. Hopefully we can do that. Also, just found out, a lot of people text me, the Tulsa game, 11 o'clock. Larry, we've had, when you don't do well, that means 11 o'clock kickoffs, and this will be, the third one in 4 weeks, but that will be on the SEC networks for that game. So, all right, I promised Larry he'd hear something about himself he hadn't heard probably in a long time. Nobody does it more uniquely than Jim Rasco. Give it up for Jim, everybody, for an introduction.
Okay, I've been allotted my usual 4 minutes to cover the entire football life of our guest speaker. So here we go. I first found our speaker, actually it was a photo of him, but we couldn't really pull it up. It wasn't the greatest condition, but it was in the Cleveland Plain Dealer newspaper of October 26, 1962. Wearing number 32 is a 15-year-old, 215-pound junior fullback for the Stowe Bulldogs. Stowe is a small town located just outside Akron, Ohio. 2 years later, in 1964, I found that Larry Csonka was playing fullback on offense and tackle on defense for the freshman team at Syracuse University. Then in my copy of Street and Smith's college football preview for 1965, I read that Syracuse was returning some great running backs, including future Hall of Famer Floyd Little, and that sophomore Larry Csonka was expected to be a starter at defensive tackle. However, Coach Ben Schwartzwalder chose to move Csonka to fullback, and the sophomore rushed for 795 yards in his first season with the varsity. As a junior, Csonka was named first team on 2 All-American teams as he rushed for 1,012 yards, outgaining senior Floyd Little, who gained only 881 yards but was named to 3 All-American teams. As a senior, Csonka rushed for 1,127 yards, set 6 school records, including the all-time Syracuse rushing record with a 3-year total of 2,934 yards. He was a unanimous All-American. He played in 4 college All-Star games following his senior season, being named MVP of the Coaches All-American game in June, and he was the leading ground gainer for the College All-Stars against the Green Bay Packers on August the 2nd, 1968. Got a picture of that out of my program there. Okay, I can't really do justice to his professional career in my remaining time, but I'll try to cover as much as I can. 1968, first running back chosen in the NFL draft by the Miami Dolphins. 1970, first team All-Conference and his first selection to play in the Pro Bowl All-Star game. 1971, first team All-Pro, goes over 1,000 yards for the first time as a pro, had the highest average per rushing attempt in the NFL. Another Pro Bowl, and the Dolphins play in their first Super Bowl, losing to the Cowboys. 1972, the Dolphins finished the regular season with a record of 14-0, and then win all 3 playoff games, including the Super Bowl on January 14, 1973, to finish with a perfect record of 17-0, which still stands. Hasn't been equaled. During the regular season, Csonka goes over 1,000 yards for the second time, repeats his first team All-Pro, selected to play in his 3rd Pro Bowl, and in that Super Bowl victory, he gains 112 yards on only 15 carries. In 1973, rushes for over 1,000 yards for the 3rd consecutive year. Named first team All-Pro for the 3rd consecutive year. Also named to play in his 4th consecutive Pro Bowl. He runs for 6 touchdowns in the 3 playoff wins. He's named Super Athlete of the Year by the Professional Football Writers Association. And he'll never forget Super Bowl VIII, January 13, 1974. Dolphins 24, Vikings 7. Csonka carries the ball 33 times and gains 145 yards, including 2 touchdowns, and is named Most Valuable Player in the Super Bowl. Well, I've about run out of time, so let me wind up by saying that in 1974, Larry scores 9 touchdowns, selected to play in his 5th consecutive Pro Bowl. 1975, he plays for the Memphis Southmen of the World Football League. When that league flows, he plays 3 seasons for the New York Giants. Then Larry winds up his career by returning to the Dolphins for the 1979 season. In his final season, at the age of 33, he rushes for 837 yards and scores 13 touchdowns. After what you've heard from me, it's no surprise that Larry's been inducted in both the College Football Hall of Fame and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it's no surprise that both Syracuse University and the Miami Dolphins have retired Larry's jersey, number 39. So please welcome number 39 Hall of Famer Larry Csonka.
Thank you.
All right. Why don't you take this one right there? All right. Check, check, check. Check that mic again, Larry. Make sure it's good.
Yeah, well, this chair is high enough to provide a test of its own. Yeah, I think my mic's fine.
Larry, I have to ask, what is it like traveling from Wasilla to Little Rock? How long did it take just for our
It was
crowd?
about 31 hours, I think, by the time I got up and the time I laid down in the hotel was 31 hours later. But you lose 4 hours before you even get on the airplane. So anytime you're going from west, you folks know out here, going to the East Coast, you know, that's a terrible thing. But when you travel from east to west, you gain time, which changes the whole situation. So it wasn't that bad.
A lot of people ask, you were an Ohioan, and how did you wind up in Alaska? What was the lure of Alaska?
Well, I don't want to bore you all with this. I'm a farm boy. I grew up on a small 20-acre dirt farm between two huge dairy farms, and because of the way the family was like, I was born right after the Second World War, so my older siblings were 4 years older, and there were none born for several years, so I was pretty much grew up by myself. And I got affiliated with all the livestock, and pretty much my world existed out in the middle of the country with working with animals. And one day, Mom brought home a grocery bag and had an outdoor magazine on it, and it had a picture of a grizzly bear, Kodiak bear on it. And I sat down while the ice cream melted in the car before I carried in the groceries and read about Alaska. And from that day forward, 1958 on, I was had my eyes set on Alaska, and I had to go through football to kind of get to Alaska.
Yeah, and you've been in Alaska for how many years now?
First time I went to Alaska was with the going over for the military to visit the troops, and it was in 1968. That was 50 years ago, right? Yeah.
How about that?
And the plane broke down in Anchorage. We stopped in Anchorage on the way to Vietnam, Saigon, and they said it was going to be 18 hours before they could fly a part up from Portland. So I went out front, and there was Bob's Rent-A-Junk in front of the Anchorage airport, and for $5 you could rent a car. Some of you fellows with cotton tops in here besides me can remember when you could rent a car for $5 for a day. And I drove down to the Kenai Peninsula in the snow, followed a snowplow. It was December. And I just fell in love with what I saw and what I had read about. So I was destined, or that was my target, to end up in Alaska. I wanted to hunt and fish in Alaska. But football kind of interfered with that. Football's played exactly the opposite of all the great seasons for hunting and fishing in Alaska. Right. Think about it. It's absolutely wrong. That's why when the World Football League and later on the USFL came along and they were going to play in spring football, I was all about that. I love that. Then you have all the fall and all of the latter part of the summer that's available for fishing and hunting.
And you mentioned to me, I saw reading some material, you've had your partner there with you for many years as well, correct?
Audrey Bradshaw, yeah. We got together in probably 1986, and formed Alliance, and she told me the rules, and I said, okay. And she's a lot smarter than I am, and that's what else could I say, And we agreed that she liked the outdoors life as well, and lo and behold, we found out that there's a silent majority of folks in the country that really like the out of doors and still have on their bucket list Alaska. So when we started airing the show, we thought, well, what a great way to see Alaska is we'll try to put this show on for 3 or 4 years and fish and hunt and let the sponsors pay for it. And that was our agenda. Lo and behold, the ratings just went through the ceiling. For a while, I tried to convince Audrey it's because I was pretty, but that didn't work. Like I said, she's smart. And you can appreciate that. And anyway, it went on for 17 years. We went on and played the show for 17 years, and I got to see all of Alaska there was to see.
There's some great on his website. They've got a lot of videos on there that you can go back and watch. It's really quality. I was telling him about Jerry McInnes, about how much outdoor work had been done through Jerry McInnes here. We've got to dive into football. There's so much, as Jim was talking about, so many directions to go with Larry Csonka. But right off the bat, this is from a current member, Touchdown Club member, that's here today. In 1969, the Miami Dolphins played the Philadelphia Eagles. Larry Csonka was 6'2" and weighed 230, broke through the line and into the Eagles' secondary. A 5'10", 180-pound defensive back got into perfect tackling position and planted his face mask directly into the number 39 jersey. Approximately 5 minutes later, the defensive back awoke and wasn't sure what had just happened. He questioned his teammate as to whether he had made the tackle and was told that Zonka eventually went down. That was the beginning of the defensive back contemplating life after football. That was none other than the former Razorback great who had the interception record until Steve Atwater broke it, Gary Adams. Where is Gary? Stand up. Let's give Gary a round of applause. There he is right there.
Gary, I don't remember it exactly like that, but okay.
He said it was like being hit by a freight train.
Well, when you have, Conrad, you appreciate this. When you have guards in front of you that open a hole, and you shoot through the hole, and none of the defensive linemen, which in the NFL average, 270 probably is an average, and are very quick fellas, and none of them touch you. And none of the linebackers behind them, which weigh probably 225 to 240, none of those touch you. Now you've got a clear shot. It's like running right down this aisle right here. You just see a little gap of sunlight. And unlike the defense, when you see a gap of sunlight, you don't want to take it. On the offense, when you see a gap of sunlight, you want to go there as fast as you can. So when you go there, there's nobody there. The defensive linemen and the linebackers have been blocked. Now you look, and here comes a defensive back that weighs all of 200 pounds or 180 soaking wet. He's got a hell of a job to do, And you're in this little, there's not going to be any fancy Dan. We're talking about, here it is, I've got it, you want it, take it. And that's what happens. So in those significant situations, you learn to try to hit those safeties and defensive backs as hard as you can, because when you go back to the huddle, in our huddle, our wide receiver, our flanker, was a guy named Paul Warfield, Hall of Famer. Paul was very quiet, probably the classiest guy I've known in my entire NFL career. He'd be standing beside me. When Paul spoke, everybody else went quiet because he didn't do it very often, and what came out of his mouth were gems of information. When I came back to the huddle, after colliding with the defensive back, Paul would lean over and pat me and say, thanks. And he would turn to Bob Greasy and say, run me on the post corner right into that guy, right now. Because he would benefit. See, that's how one thing complements another in the NFL. So anytime I broke open and ran, it wasn't because I wasn't fast enough. Well, you guys are too smart for that. You know I wasn't fast enough. But I would pick the defensive back that was going to hit me first, and right at the last second, I would turn into him, having a 40 or 60-pound advantage. I'd make him pay the price because on the next play, he would have one-on-one coverage if we could manage it on our best wide receiver. That's how it works.
Ron, if you'll get ready to hit the lights here in a minute, just a second. Speaking of, our buddy Cliff Harris got the Cliff Harris Award. Cliff said, this is Cliff trying to tackle. If you can see, he said, I asked what it was like that's when you were the Giants. He said it was like trying to tackle a Volkswagen was his description. And Cliff said you were quite the load. And listen, I normally don't do this, but for this week and next week, I thought it was worthwhile. If we can, I've got a short little video. It's narrated by NFL Films, because sometimes you forget just how powerful and great Larry Zonka was as a runner. Ron, if you can hit the lights, and Matt, if you can go ahead and punch that up. This is just to give you some refresh your memory how great this guy, number 39, really was.
The Thunder in the great Miami Dolphins teams of the early 1970s was number 39, fullback Larry Zonka.
When all else fails and it's obvious it's going to come down to a direct physical confrontation, I always thought it reflected a higher degree of intelligence to do the inflicting first. I was out into the open field where it was a man in the secondary. Obviously, I'd have an extreme size and weight advantage. Generally, they were looking for a side shot rather than a head-on shot, simply because of the ratio of size, weight, and so on. But very often, if you would cut back directly into them, that element of surprise would completely discombobulate whatever they were trying to put together. And you'd be able to not only avoid the tackle, but lay in some devastating blows. I liked that style. early 70s to 250 or 255 in the latter part of the 70s because I was running inside, and it was kind of fun to meet head on. When I won, it was very rewarding. I didn't like it when I lost that battle.
Csonka's lost confrontations were often as breathtaking as the many battles that he won. Drafted first by Miami in 1968, it wasn't until 1970 and the arrival of new head coach Don Shula that this down and dirty runner began leaving his impact on the NFL.
Shows some speed
Shula
right
quickly
there.
found ways to exploit the Zonk's speed and quickness, both of which were uncommon in a runner so large. And not since the days of Bronco Nagurski had the NFL experienced a runner with such punishing tackle-breaking power.
Even if you had an open shot to hit him as hard as you could hit him, I always had the sense that I got the worst of the deal.
I can remember some shots that I took on him one-on-one, and, you know, I couldn't bring him down. You know, you need help. It's like trying to catch a runaway truck on an incline. When you see a bus, and you put it on the side of a hill, and you didn't put your emergency brake on it, and it starts to roll. You know, you're trying to grab it, and there's no way.
All right, that's good. How about that? How about Larry Csonka and some of the great runs of Larry Csonka?
Almost went to sleep watching that.
You know, it's amazing. You seem, we had me, Joe Green, Too Tall Jones, and those guys seem pretty healthy too. You seem to be that you move around pretty well considering some of the hits you took over your career.
Well, you see me when I'm up and moving about 6:30 in the morning when I first get up and walk across the room to turn on the light to the bathroom. All those fellas that hit me there, Joe Green and the rest of them, I think about each one of them. Roy Winston that flipped me over backwards there, L5 down here. You know, it was, I think of him, and I don't think pleasing thoughts about him.
And
I hope somewhere he's thinking of me. That's what I...
And I think, Larry, I would have to say that pretty much every one of those hits would not be allowed today. They'd have been ejected for those penalties, right?
Probably on both sides of the football.
That's right.
You weren't running back now can be called for targeting with your head,
right.
Which is
just
hard to believe.
Yeah.
I don't understand how they can play the game and do that. But for years I talked about. It's too bad they put the hard-shelled headgear into football in the late 40s
right.
or early 50s. Because if we'd have just stayed with the leather helmets, you wouldn't have had all this lead with the head
right.
stuff because you broke your neck. You wouldn't
right.
do that.
Right.
Soccer players don't run and put their head down and hit each other in the chest very often. I mean, they do it once maybe. If they're lucky, they get away with it. But you can't make that a procedural thing without doing some terrible damage to yourself. So if they'd have just stayed with the leather helmets, silly as that sounds, it would have avoided the entire problem. And here's another part of that, and I'll just touch on that because we're going to talk about some other things. But the real fact of the matter is that the head-on collisions that you've seen in that picture there, the infrequency, that happens perhaps 3 or 4 or 5 times a game. But what you don't see is the offensive and defensive linemen who collide each play, even in practice. And the shuddering of the two of them hitting each other. You take 250-pound plus size men and let them smack each other, and they're just the very easy grazing of their helmets still has a substantial effect on the brain. The repetition of that versus the big hits is more of a problem than the big hits. So just by targeting, you're not going to do away with the brain injury so much. It's the repeated contact of the offensive and defensive linemen that really have the significant damage.
I love this picture, Matt. If you punch up these 3 guys, many call them the greatest running backfield in the history of the NFL. Of course, yourself, Jim Kick, Mercury Morris. That's just, I don't think you guys are probably winning that game or you were exhausted one or the other, but it's just so iconic. I mean, it's to have 3 of that great of running backs together. Just talk about playing with those two.
I think when you get into the definition of team, and you know, and usually speech that I give, I talk about teamwork. Teamwork is when you don't have to carry, even if you've lugged the ball, and kind of, Taylor, you could really relate to this. You lug 34 carries, by the way, that's a hell of a job. That's a hell of a day, buddy. I don't care if you made 2 yards, 34 times and everything is rough. When you go down the field and carry the ball like that repeatedly, and you get down to the end zone, and because it's a more effective play to use you as a lead blocker versus, because they're going to be looking at you, you've carried it all the way down. Now what happens is if you fake me into the middle after I've punished the team that we're running against 3 yards at a time, and we run 20 carries right straight down the field, and we line up in that same formation, they'd be fools not to have to try to defense it. Well, if you fake to me and hand it to Mercury Morris, who's going to sprint to the corner, guess where the defensive corner, he's got his nose stuck in. So we would do that. And when you have real teamwork, it doesn't matter whether you lugged it all the way down there and Mercury crossed the line. It's whether or not you scored, whether you made it work, whether you won. Because that's more important than the individual stat. And when you have a coach that gets you so designed to that, when you have a coach that's so forceful in how he applies the thought of the team, you working as a unit, that you care more about that than your individual stats. You care more about getting him off your back on Tuesday morning than whether or not you carried across the goal line. Now, I know that sounds a little funny, but it's true, and that's what makes teamwork. When you talk about the military, that's how they work. When you take that military attitude and you apply it to the sport, that we're not one, we're not just a great wide receiver, we're not just a great running back. We're a team. Somehow, some way, we're going to get it down the field. If I block all the way down or if I carry all the way down, makes no difference. Later on, the Hall of Fame is a great thing, but it's very unjust. A lot of people put all the Hall of Fame players in the Hall of Fame that aren't in the Hall of Fame. Now I'll shut up.
And of course, you were led 3 Super Bowls. We talked about 2-time winner, one of the great coaches of all time, Don Shula. Just maybe share some thoughts to our group about what Don Shula meant to you and what kind of coach he was.
I can sum it up pretty much in one little story. When we went in to play Oakland, after the '72 season, we had gone undefeated, clear through the Super Bowl. Second or third game of the season, we play the Oakland Raiders in Oakland. Because there's construction going on in the stadium in Oakland, we had to utilize the same locker room as the Raiders. There's at different times on the day before the game we go. No. On Saturday, we go into practice the day before the game, and we have to utilize their locker room, so we have to practice in the afternoon. They did in the morning. So we go into the locker room. Well, they have a defensive tackle named Art Toms that played with me at Syracuse, and Art was the kind of guy that would like forget his lunch, and he's a big man, eats a lot. So that tells you that, you know, I wanted to have his locker, so I went over and saw where his name was on his locker because we're using their facility because the construction is going on the other side. And I sit down at the locker, and I look up, and in typical fashion, Art left his game plan in the top of the locker. I take the game plan down, and it's got all the stats on our offense and what we do in game situations and what they can expect and what defenses they're going to run against it. And the first 10 defensive plays are outlined with formations. I think this is a very valuable document. And being the kind of guy I am, I didn't want to cheat, so I was going to go give it to the coach. Is it cheating or isn't it cheating when it's presented to you like that? You know, it's a fine line. You know, I know what the priest would say, but I also know what my older brother would say. So I take the report and I go over to Monty Clark, our offensive line coach, walks up to me and I say, Monty, here's, you know, look at this. And he goes, oh my God. He says, is this for real? I said, well, Art Toms, and I know him, you know, that's completely believable that he left it there. So he said, don't say anything to him. I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And I walked away and sat down. We lost the game. After we lose the game, I'm getting dressed after the game. We lose the game in the fourth quarter, right at the end of the game. And it's the first loss in 17 or 19 games or whatever it is. And I'm getting dressed and walking out, and here comes Monty Clark down the aisle. And I said, Monty. He said, yeah. I said, did you give that report to Coach Shula? He said, yeah. I said, well, why didn't we use it? We could have scored on that first. He said, Coach Shula took it, tore it in half, and threw it in the trash can. That is the integrity of the head coach named Don Shula. I don't know that exists today in the NFL, but that shows you that he is going to be the right way or no way for him. Now, that strength of character also carried over to strength of belief in the, kind of the military system of running his practices. And in Miami in August, in double sessions in full gear in 95-degree heat and 100% humidity, you get pretty tired of listening to what he's going to outline every day after day in double sessions. It was a real test, but we started to win, so we followed him.
Obviously, what a successful career you had, the Super Bowls, MVPs. And it's interesting, some of the two of his speakers we've had, Larry, we've had Too Tall Jones and Mean Joe Green. And, and we're going to have the same thing with Earl Campbell. There's a thread that runs through with all of our successful speakers this year, and that is a notoriety outside of football. And I know you were on the cover of People magazine one year. Matt, if you can punch that up, there you are right there. You were showing up in...
Look at that nose. I learned to stop punching people in the fist with my nose right after I got out of the NFL.
So the next one, Matt, that you've got, there's Lee Majors. You had an acting gig with Lee Majors, of all things. And then the next one is, I think, Jim Kick with you and on the Johnny Carson show. So all this notoriety led to what we have, grown accustomed here at the Touchdown Club, is that our speakers have all done commercials. And if we could, we've got 2 commercials back-to-back. Is Ryan still here? If not, we'll just do it with all the lights. So go ahead. These are 2 back-to-back national commercials that Larry did. You can watch either the back
A poem about deodorants. Roll, roll the roll-on, all sticky and wet. Or spray your underarm. What a fog you'll get. So give me the stick, Old Spice deodorant stick. It goes right to the spot. All wet or foggy, it's not. It guards against odor the whole day long. With Old Spice freshness, you cannot go wrong. So goodbye roll-on, so long spray. Old Spice stick, it's the only way.
How about that? Got one more here. One more.
I honestly don't remember these.
Here we go.
Don, if you want a date, get in shape.
Shape? I'm solid steel.
Chic shape, Zonk. Chic shape.
Get clean, get close, get comfort too. Get your face in chic shape.
Click in Chic Super 2, the only twin blades Teflon coated for incredibly comfortable close shaves.
Great shape, Zonk.
That's chic shape.
How about that? There we go.
Do you run a detective service? Where do you find these things?
You were saying the internet.
Unlike Shula, he didn't tear it up. See, he put it up on.
What was that like back then when you were getting all those kind of opportunities? And I mean, Johnny Carson and Lee Majors and TV commercials. What was that like during that time?
It was great. It was a lot of attention, but I really wanted to be in Alaska, if you want to know the truth. But I think all the attention is great, but when you get all down to it, it's a spin-off of what you accomplished on the football field, and that was teamwork. And the team I was on at the time, the 72 team, was probably the most significant thing, certainly in the sports world, probably in my life outside of my immediate family, was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And I think I owe that certainly to Coach Shula and the rest of the coaches who put the thing together, and my comrades on the team, teammates. And I think when I think about that, you run up on the high times of doing the commercials and all the public appearances, and you make lots of money, and beautiful women come up and ask for your autograph, and how many farm boys ever have that happen to them? But it all kind of pales. You look to do what you want to do, and after it was over, I walked away from that and had a good feeling about it. But it was very much a learning experience.
We have to talk about that 72 team. Now, again, no one has done it since. And it's become really a national thing to track you guys down and see what you do when no other team can claim whether it be the Patriots who lose that last playoff game or Super Bowl or whatever, you guys do a celebration. And I looked on the internet and I came across used, I don't know, I think this was 3 years ago after, I guess, the last team that was eligible to maybe go undefeated lost. And Matt, if you can punch that up real quick. This is Larry Csonka celebrating. There you go. How about that?
That was in my garage in Florida. We posted that because that's when the New England Patriots lost in the Super Bowl. That's how close they came. And the Chicago team, back in the Bears came within one game. Of course, they lost to Miami that year. Yeah. But that's how close it's come. Right now, we have 2 undefeated teams. There's, I guess, the L.A. Rams are undefeated right now, and the Kansas City Chiefs. But luckily, they play each other. Now, I would dearly like to see them play to a tie. I would like to be just a half game better than both of them.
I do find that intriguing. Think about this: is that that was back in 1972, and that still means something to you. That's still something that's is so hard to do. And that's special to every one of the Dolphins that are still around.
That team unity was what I was commenting about before. Fellas that play, fellas that have been involved in the team thing, kids that have belonged to a high school or a college where that tremendous teamwork is paid off in a championship year. That's why the last couple of weeks I looked at the Razorbacks and watched. And it's been embarrassing, the opening thing, where they ran the touchdown back on the opening kickoff and then on the first play. But you're looking at a coach that's coming in there, and this is where it gets so significant in college ball particularly. He's coming into a situation where he's inherited the people that are there. In the NFL, you come into a position where you inherit the people that are there as a new coach. But in the NFL, you can trade people. You can move people around. You can pick who you want. This man started with what he's got. Now, there's 2 ways to look at that. You can say, well, it's not that good a personnel, but then on the other side, it's coaching too. So it adds up. What I've seen in those last 2 games, and those are both losing efforts, but what I've seen is endurance and the willingness to play. The kids still go out. They make mistakes. They make mostly mental errors, which suggests that they're not used to the new system. Defensively and offensively, you've got an offense that's really going great guns. It can put points on the boards. Even in the most dire of circumstances, those kids move the ball. I watched them the last 2 weeks. I've watched them. Defensively, it takes more to learn defensively. We were talking about this a little while ago, Taylor. I talked about when you see a gap in the offense, you want to go for it. But on the defensive side of the ball, you see an opening. You can't, because you all have to play as a unit. Defense has to be much more of a team than offense, because they cannot take it upon themselves to try to make the big play, because it opens up a weakness in the defense, and a good offensive coordinator sees that one time. The rest of the season, you'll be tested every game with that opening. So you need patience for your defense. It's going to take more than just 1 year of a coach coming in, but the fact that the kids still keep playing as hard as they're playing after what's happened to them in the first and second quarters is significant. You can't look for a coach to come in college ball and look for him to turn it around unless he's blessed with great personnel that also carry an A+ average scholastically. It just isn't going to happen, because he's got to change that whole format. A little time, but there's a lot of people to work with. Defensively, certainly, and superb offense right now.
How about that for the Razorbacks, Larry Csonka?
That's just my observation from being an old jock. They've changed the rules a lot on me, but I still like the college. I like college football because it's still more of the old brand football. It's still a lot more teamwork than what happens in the pros. And you see that, and you see the kids so well rehearsed, and so many more of them get to play in college. That's the great thing about it. The unfortunate part about the NFL, I have guys come up to me all the time and say, I was drafted, and I wasn't very good. I got cut right before the last cut, in the deal. And I'm saying, listen, there's thousands of players that are drafted, or that come out of college football every year that are not drafted. There's only a few hundred that make the NFL. So never apologize for not making it in the NFL. If you're at the right spot at the right time, you make it in the NFL. If I would have been drafted by Green Bay and they had Jimmy Taylor, an all-pro running back, all-pro fullback, that was there doing the job that I was drafted to do, I'd have to wait around 5 years to get a break if I could if I could hang long enough. So at the right spot at the right time goes along with that. Having an all-pro offensive line in front of you is a great thing too. So those things, all those things have to fall in line. But the fact of the matter, a lot of guys will come up and say to me, you know, I was with this team or that team, but I got cut by the thing. That's just because the chance of it. If you're at the right spot at the right time, you're blessed. But those odds are extremely rare.
I need to mention real quick, you know, I was asking Larry, I said, well, you watch the 2 Razorback games. Do you watch a lot of college football? I said, no, not really. But he did that because he was coming here to speak, and he just wanted to see a little bit about the Razorbacks, which we really appreciate. Before we let you go, 2 more questions. One, I was looking at some of the dollar figures that you were earning back in your day and that you signed as a rookie. I mean, it's sobering. I mean, like under like 30,000 and 30. I mean, do you look at the numbers now, the 75, the $100 million contracts? Is your response like, you know, you've got to be kidding me? Why couldn't I play 20 years later? I deserve a cut of that, or what? What's your thoughts on that?
Sure, I'll take a cut. Yeah. I think things are proportionate. Firstly, I'll tell you, I bought a brand new pickup truck when I signed in 1968, and I paid $1,400 for that new pickup truck. So $30,000 wasn't a lot of money unless you were in 1968. Then it was a lot of money. Now, does it compare with millions with being healed for life by signing one contract in the top 10 players that are drafted? No. But let me tell you something. I went to the NFL and played in order to get enough money to go do what I wanted to do in Alaska. Had I signed in the NFL for $5 million, a signing bonus, they might not have ever seen me in the NFL. I'd have been gone. You know? The truth is the truth. But I'm, you know, envious, yeah, a little bit. It would have been nice to have that kind of money. But things have changed drastically since 1968 to the current 50 years later. Sure, it would have been nice to have all that money. But we made money and we were paid very well for what we did. And we enjoyed it when we did it.
Last question. You have Earl Campbell coming up next week. And I think most people, I was talking to Cliff Harris about it because he played against both of you. And you saw all the different comments. You saw Mean Joe Green on the video, who we've had here. And I was just wondering, I mean, everybody says, man, to tackle Larry Csonka was unbelievable. Is there anybody on the other side of the ball that you look back and go, man, every time I played against that guy, I mean, it was a battle. I was physical and big as I was. That was a guy that could lay it to me.
Butkus, Nitschke,
yeah, no,
the list goes on. You know, Krause and Kasalki were 2 safeties that played for the Minnesota Vikings, and I got to see so much of the Vikings. I didn't care if I ever saw another Viking after about a 3-year period there. But Krause and Kasalki were strong and weak safety, and I used to try to pick on them, and I finally realized about the 3rd game that I wasn't picking on them. They were picking on me, and that's how it goes around. But there were people that you did not want to see. You know, the fellows I alluded to, Butkus, Nitschke. There were several defensive ends. Carl Eller played with the Vikings. He was a guy you didn't want to see. He taught me about a clothesline. Back then in the 1968, they had a thing called a clothesline. They put their arm out straight, put their fist, and any back that was running out of the backfield in a pass situation had to look back at his quarterback, because if the quarterback got stuck and couldn't throw it deep, he'd drop it off to you just as you crossed the line of scrimmage. In college, that wasn't permitted, but in the pros it was, and that's how my Adam's apple moved from here to here. And Carl Eller looked at me and said, "Rookie, you're the stupidest man I've ever seen." He said, "What?" Yeah. And I tried to answer him, but all I could do was squeak. So there were several I didn't want to go up against. Yeah.
Speaking of nose, real quick, one last thing. How many times I've seen that online? Guess.
Oh, this one hasn't. This is the new. This is the new one.
This is the new nose.
And by the way, I never had to break it. Someone always did it for me.
Yeah. Have any idea how many?
I probably 10 or 12. The first time my nose was broken, I was 7 years old, and I was putting a 5-gallon bucket of water down into a manger next to a steer that was probably 1,800 or 1,300 pounds. And the handle broke on the bucket, and he had his head down in some loose hay in his manger, or in his trough there. And when I dropped the bucket, it startled him, and he threw his head up. When he threw his head up, I don't remember. I was 7 or 8 years old. That bucket was heavier than I was. And his top of his head hit me right across the bridge of the nose, broke my nose. It closed the little air holes that you got in the top of your nasal passages up here, got closed by like 70%. And back then in 1957 or whenever that was, you know, the doctor put a Band-Aid over your nose and put it straight, and that was it. And I learned to breathe with like 25 to 30% clearage. In other words, it was 70% blocked. That's why in high school I had to cut my mouthpiece on both sides so I could get air. I couldn't breathe through my nose. They made us wear featherweight mouthpieces back then, and you had to have it in or it was a penalty. So I had to make a phony one so I could show. They'd come by and you'd have to smile and show them your mouthpiece. And I'd do that, but I had the backs, so my jaw bones were still together, but that's the only way I could breathe. After I retired from football, this is a story I like to tell people that are going in, until you appreciate this. 5 years after I got out of football, Audrey said, you know, we need to do something with your nose. You know, it's all over here. And she said, we're getting tired of trying to put makeup on it on TV. So what we'd like to do is, you know, we got a doctor, we got a surgeon, and so I went to a plastic surgeon, and they took my nose off my face and cleared out, and that's when he discovered that the passages were blocked. So to make a long story short, he augured them out and worked that out and put my nose back on, and that was the first unmolested breath that I took at 100% since I was 7 years old. But I never knew, you know, back, some of the other cotton tops in here can appreciate what I'm talking about. Back then, when you broke something or you went down on field, they came over and rubbed dirt on it and put a Band-Aid on it and sent you back on the field. Now they've got a little tent, they take you in for an X-ray, and they run an MRI on you right there on the field, you know. That's the biggest difference in pro football I see today is so many people are laying on the field and they don't get up, you know. Then they get up and walk off. Usually if you got up, people would throw things at you, you know. In Buffalo, they threw half-full beer cans. You know people don't like you when they throw a half-full beer can, I mean, from the top level.
Well, Larry, listen, this guy came all the way from Wasilla, Alaska. We're so honored to have you here. What a great job. Give it up for Larry Csonka.
Thank you.
Csonka, everybody.
Thank you. I like to add, if I may,
Matt.
Is it on? Yes. If I may, I've done touchdown clubs all over the country. Now, this is probably the 100th time I've been in front of a touchdown club. This is the biggest crowd for touchdown club I think I've ever been in front of. And the other point I want to bring out is it's the one with the most women in it. You have really good-looking people here. Good luck. Go Razorbacks.
Great job. Someone back here. That was outstanding.
Good. Thank you.
All we got to do now. This will go up. Yeah, I'm gonna be able to right quick. That's one. Thank you. Just make sure Larry don't back up the phone. Yeah, be careful. This is a great drop. Check, check, check. Hey, want to make sure if you're a sponsor or a 50-yard line, you need to be up here at the front. Big Red, I know I don't have my glasses on, but I see you guys need to be at the front. 50-yard. If you're a 50-yard line or a sponsor, you need to be up here first, so you don't have to be at the back.
Good to see you.
All 50-yard line and sponsors come up to the front. Have your red tickets. Red tickets go first. Everybody else after that.